Tonight on Dark Matter Nap, we are going to explore a scenario that stands as the ultimate disruption of our night sky. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, looking out your window, and noticing that the moon looks slightly larger than normal. At first, you dismiss it as an optical illusion, a classic trick of the horizon. But as the days progress, the lunar disk grows steadily bigger, wider, and terrifyingly detailed. The craters, ancient lava plains, and vast gray basins become sharply visible to the naked eye, casting an eerie, brilliant silver glare across the midnight landscape. The delicate gravitational thread holding our satellite in its stable, timeless orbit has snapped. The moon has stopped its silent, defensive loop and has begun a direct, catastrophic plunge toward the surface of the Earth. We view the moon as a peaceful, permanent guardian of the night, a static fixture of human history. But in reality, it is a massive, trillion-ton ball of rock locked in a high-stakes cosmic balancing act. Its forward orbital speed of over 2,000 miles per hour is the only force generating the centrifugal resistance needed to counteract Earth's immense gravitational pull. What happens if that balance falls apart? Most people think that if the moon fell, it would just hit us like a giant asteroid and create a sudden, cinematic explosion. But the laws of physics outline a far more slow-motion, agonizing, and structurally violent breakdown of our entire planet before the two worlds ever physically touch. Tonight, we will break down the exact mechanical timeline of a falling moon. We will see why the oceans would violently swallow our global cities, analyze the sudden fracturing of the solid bedrock beneath your feet, and explore the final, terrifying moment when the moon pulls itself apart to form a ring of pure destruction. Before we chart this fatal countdown, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Now, settle in, turn off the lights, and let the descent begin. To understand the immediate structural breakdown of this scenario, we have to look at the first few days of the plunge, where the most immediate and devastating changes would not occur in the sky, but within the fluid dynamics of our oceans. The moon's gravitational pull is the primary driver of our planetary tides, bulging the water slightly on the sides facing toward and away from it. As the distance separating the two worlds begins to shrink, this gravitational pull increases exponentially according to the unyielding rule of the inverse square law. When the distance halves, the gravitational force does not just double, it quadruples. By the end of the first week, the daily high tides would transform into massive, unyielding walls of water moving across the globe. The oceans would systematically swell, pushing past ancient coastlines and spilling deep into low-lying continental basins. Global trading hubs and coastal megacities like New York, Mumbai, London, Tokyo, and Shanghai would be completely submerged under a permanent, rising flood of seawater. The global maritime logistics network would snap overnight, throwing human society into immediate resource scarcity. The land would become an unnavigable maze of flooded ruins, while the moon grows larger in the sky every single night, a silent witness to the rising waters below. As the second week arrives, the moon crosses the halfway mark of its descent, and its gravitational influence moves past the oceans to sink deep beneath our planetary skin. The pulling force is no longer just shifting the loose liquid of the seas. It is actively warping the solid bedrock of Earth's crust. The planet would experience a continuous, violent mechanical stretching, flexing the tectonic plates like a sheet of cheap plastic. Vast, unprecedented earthquakes would erupt simultaneously across every major fault line on the globe, flattening inland architecture that managed to survive the initial coastal flooding. This extreme structural flexing would destabilize the underground magma chambers sitting beneath our surface. Long-dormant supervolcanoes would be violently squeezed from beneath, triggering sudden, catastrophic eruptions that blast billions of tons of toxic ash, dust, and sulfur dioxide directly into the upper atmosphere. The sky would turn a permanent, bruised shade of gray, blocking out the sun and plunging the planet into a sudden volcanic twilight, illuminated only by the blinding, massive reflection of the approaching lunar surface. By the third week, the atmospheric dynamics of Earth would begin to experience their own several disruptions. The Moon's immense gravity well would begin to pull on the air column itself, compressing and dragging our atmosphere toward the approaching satellite. This creates a massive atmospheric tidal wave, generating permanent, global hypercanine windstorms that scream across the continents at hundreds of miles per hour. The air pressure would fluctuate wildly, making breathing difficult and causing rapid, agonizing changes in ambient temperature. Simultaneously, the Moon would now occupy a visual portion of the visible sky, appearing over 20 times larger than normal. Its individual mountain peaks, deep trenches, and crater rims would be visible in stark, terrifying clarity during the day, eclipsing the sun for hours at a time and throwing random, sweeping shadows across the trembling planet. The sheer visual weight of the lunar colossus hanging directly overhead would trigger deep existential panic and social collapse among the surviving enclaves of humanity. As the countdown enters its final days, the Moon approaches a definitive mathematical barrier known to physics as the Roche limit. The Roche limit is the exact distance where the gravitational tidal forces of a massive planet exceed the internal gravity holding its satellite together. For the Earth-Moon system, this hard physical boundary sits at roughly 11,000 miles above our surface. Before the Moon can physically strike our atmosphere, the difference in Earth's gravitational pull on the near side of the Moon versus the far side becomes too intense for the lunar rock to withstand. The Moon would begin to violently deform, stretching from a sphere into an elongated, egg-like shape. Then, with a deafening, silent fracture, the entire lunar structure would shatter. Trillions of tons of solid rock, ancient craters, and lunar mountains would pull themselves apart, dissolving into a chaotic, grinding river of glowing debris. The falling Moon would not end in a single, cinematic impact on a planetary surface. Instead, the shattered fragments of our satellite would spread out along our orbital plane, organizing themselves into a magnificent, shimmering and lethal ring system, precisely like the rings of Saturn. From the surface of a devastated Earth, any survivors hidden deep inside underground bedrock bunkers would look up through the volcanic haze to see a vast, glowing band of rock arcing across the sky from horizon to horizon. But this ring would not be peaceful. The individual fragments, some the size of small pebbles, others the size of entire mountain ranges, would constantly collide, smash, and jostle within the high-velocity ring grid. Over the following weeks, hundreds of thousands of these loose boulders would lose their orbital speed due to atmospheric drag. They would begin to drop out of the ring, raining down onto the surface of Earth as a continuous, unyielding bombardment of hypervelocity meteors. The sky would burn with the friction fire of these falling fragments, systematically boiling away any remaining surface moisture, vaporizing the remaining oceans into thick clouds of superheated steam, and turning the outer crust of our planet into a sterile, cratered wasteland of molten glass. This terrifying countdown reveals a profound truth about the stable background metrics of our everyday lives. We look up at the Moon and view its nightly journey as a boring, aesthetic routine of the calendar. We think of gravity as a simple force that keeps our feet on the ground. But in reality, that 93,000-mile orbit is a vital shield paid for every single second by the strict laws of orbital velocity. Our world is only stable, our oceans are only calm, and our tectonic plates are only quiet because the Moon is outrunning the gravity of Earth at a precise, mathematical velocity. The universe is a structured machine where motion balances mass, and any disruption to that motion transforms our peaceful sky into an engine of total erasure. As the rain of fire intensifies, the true chemical transformation of Earth's surface moves into its final, irreversible phase. The superheated steam filling the sky creates a dense, runaway greenhouse envelope that locks planetary heat inside a permanent thermal loop. The average ambient temperature on the ground climbs past 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The synthetic infrastructure of humanity, the plastic networks, the rubber roads, and the heavy metal cities, softens and melts into a uniform, toxic slurry. Tectonic plates, pushed far past their structural limits by the crushing weight of the newly formed debris rings, begin to sink directly into the liquid mantle. The surface transitions into an unyielding ocean of liquid lava, glowing in deep oranges and blinding whites, as the internal fires of our planet completely consume the geological record of human history. Deep below this molten crust, inside the pressurized core of our planet, the silent dynamo that generates Earth's magnetic field experiences its own terminal decay. The liquid iron outer core, disrupted by the shifting gravitational gradients of the fragmented moon, alters its rotational mechanics. The convective currents that have powered our magnetosphere for billions of years slip into a chaotic, non-functional drag pattern. The invisible protective bubble surrounding our planet fractures and dissolves entirely. Without this magnetic shield, the unshielded solar wind, a supersonic stream of highly charged radioactive particles blasted from the sun, strikes our upper atmosphere with absolute mechanical velocity. The solar sandstorm acts as an unstoppable abrasive force, systematically stripping away the vaporized water molecules and light gases, blowing our atmosphere directly into the vacuum of space. This cosmic erosion converts Earth into a cold, dry, and sterile desert ball over the following millennia. The thick clouds of steam are swept away into the interstellar medium, leaving behind vast, empty rock plains covered in jagged impact craters left by the final remnants of the lunar ring. The beautiful blue masterpiece that once hosted oceans, forests, and human consciousness is systematically erased from the ledger of the solar system. When viewed from a distance, our planet looks precisely like Mars, a silent, frozen monument to a world whose protective balances fell apart. The slotted path where the moon once stabilized our rotation is a vacant, quiet zone of space-time, a reminder that the architecture of nature is protected by an uncompromising matrix of motion. Leaping forward into deep time, past the destruction of our local neighborhood, we realize that this process of orbital decay is a fundamental life cycle running across the entire universe. Millions of planets orbiting distant stars are currently watching their moons execute the exact same fatal spiral. In cool red dwarf systems, where planets must orbit exceptionally close to their suns to maintain liquid water, the intense stellar gravity triggers rapid tidal locking and rapid satellite migration. These alien worlds are caught in a permanent cycle of orbital collapse, their moons deforming and shattering into ring systems every few 100 million years, locking their biospheres into an unyielding loops of sterilization and resetting. The universe is a vast engine of structured destruction, where complexity is a temporary anomaly allowed to emerge only during brief windows of gravitational equilibrium. The unyielding linear structure of time ensures that once an orbital balance fractures, the system cannot reverse its variables. According to the laws of general relativity, massive objects do not just pull on each other through space. They carve the literal geometry of space-time. When a trillion-ton object like the moon shifts its vector, it creates a cascading ripple across the local space-time fabric that alters the paths of every passing asteroid and comet inside our system. The empty slots left behind by our collapsed satellite trigger chaotic adjustments across the asteroid belt, slinging thousands of loose boulders inward toward the inner planets. The solar system executes a violent, mechanical reset, its orbital paths tightening and shifting, until a new, quiet harmony is established across the remaining worlds, completely indifferent to the fact that the third planet's witness has vanished into dust. This structural vulnerability forces us to analyze the ultimate limitation of our current scientific paradigm. We build visual automated telescopes and deploy advanced machine learning algorithms to map the heavens, assuming that because the stars appear stable today, our environment is permanent. But computer networks are fundamentally blind to the rare, high-stakes anomalies that violate statistical averages. An algorithm can track 1,000,000 smooth orbits, but it cannot predict the exact subatomic quantum fluctuation inside a planet's core that stalls a magnetic dynamo or triggers an orbital drift. True safety requires an active, conscious interpretation of the cosmos, a continuous deployment of human observation and engineering to construct artificial stabilization fields around our planetary assets before the numbers begin to slip. If humanity chooses to remain on its birth world out of social gridlock or political comfort, our species is mathematically choosing execution by cosmic probability. We spend our collective wealth fighting over invisible ideological borders in the dirt, completely forgetting that as long as our data tracks, our genetic libraries, and our physical infrastructure reside on a single planetary surface, we are sitting inside a single extinction window. The true legacy of human consciousness cannot be preserved inside an underground bunker on a collapsing world. It requires immediate, aggressive multiplanetary expansion. We must build the starships, master the engineering of post-biological transition, and scatter our knowledge across the light-year chasms of the galaxy, ensuring that our spark outlives the brief, temporary cradle that birthed us. The alien message we decoded from the background radiation of space echoes this absolute command with chilling clarity. The voice stated that the universe is not an empty room, but a dark forest packed with silent, hidden dangers where mature civilizations move quietly, keeping their lights dimmed and their profiles small. Humanity has spent a century screaming its name into the deep dark through high-powered radio broadcasts, completely oblivious to what might be tracking the signal through the shadows. The distances separating galaxies are not a prison to keep us lonely. They are a sacred architecture designed to quarantine primitive, unstable cultures until they develop the wisdom to control their own growth or fade away peacefully inside their own system without ever infecting the wider cosmos. Settle into the darkness tonight, knowing that the beautiful, terrifying equations of physics are running perfectly across every coordinate of our universe. The stars are burning their hydrogen fuel. The vast cosmic voids are expanding at an accelerating rate driven by dark energy, and the great cosmic web is slowly winding down toward its ultimate resting state of absolute, undisturbed thermodynamic peace. But right now, the lights are still on, our planet is still spinning at full velocity, and the human voice is still echoing across the deep night. We are the conscious eyes of the cosmos, the brief flash of curiosity that turns an empty room into a meaningful masterwork. Thank you for joining me tonight on this massive, emotional 30-hour deep dive into the mechanics of gravity and cosmic balance here on Dark Matter Nap. If this long, immersive journey into a falling moon and the fragile architecture of our sky challenged your perspective on human survival, or made you appreciate the invisible constants that keep our world safe, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is the exact engine that gives me the capability to continue creating these late-night, deep explorations into the absolute mysteries of our existence. The next time you walk outside on a clear night and look up at the quiet silver crescent of the moon hanging safely in the dark sky, do not view it as a simple, boring background routine of the calendar. Look at it with a deep, quiet reverence, knowing that its nightly dance is the literal shield keeping our oceans calm, our mountains stable, and our history intact. Sleep well tonight, knowing that our planetary balance is holding strong, and that our world is safely outrunning the deep furnace of the dark. Good night, and may your dreams reach far beyond the uncrossable horizon.